Hi, folks. I'm Hub Arkush for Chicago Football, along with our senior Bears reporter and analyst, Kevin Fishbain, on my left, our Bears reporter and senior NFC North reporter and analyst, Arthur Arkush, on my right. In a separate video, we've broken down the offense as the season begins and the Bears go to training camp in Bourbonnais, Illinois. What about the defense? That is the big question for this season, and Arthur, I will come to you first. Changes everywhere at every unit. What do we focus on first in Bourbonnais?
Well, I think it starts up front. That's where the focus was for Phil Emery and the Bears in the offseason through the draft, obviously with Will Sutton and Ego Ferguson, and then just wholesale changes at defensive end with Jared Allen, Lamar Houston, Willie Young. That has to be where it all starts. How are they going to find a way to hopefully get their best pass rushers on the field, even if that means Young and Houston and Allen all at the same time? There's going to be lots of moving parts. How quickly can the rookies get acclimated and start making an impact and keep that rotation fresher on the inside as well?
Well, Arthur, I certainly cannot argue with you, but I will turn to Kevin and say, I'm going to have a hard time taking my eyes off of Shea McClellan and Jonathan Bostic.
Yeah, that's going to be a great competition. And it's going to be interesting how, because in minicamp, we saw Mel Tucker, Reggie Herring mix those four linebackers up. Briggs, DJ Williams, McClellan, and Bostic. And McClellan was a starter in the base, and then Bostic came out in the nickel. So I'm curious if we're going to continue to see that in Bourbonnais, or does Shea McClellan really come into his own at linebacker? Does he star there? Does he turn himself into the starting Sam linebacker? And does John Bostic really, come into his own as a nickel linebacker? We don't know what's going to happen there, but I think they are in a good situation in terms of they have four. They just got to see if it works out for both McClellan and Bostic at somewhat new positions.
When you draft a player in the first round, folks, you do want to get some production immediately. And yet, Arthur, the Bears have done something unusual here. They've taken a Pro Bowler in Tim Jennings and said in the nickel, and the Bears are in the nickel more than 50% of the time. He's giving up his position to Kyle Fuller, and he's sliding inside to play that nickel cornerback.
And so far, he's been a good sport, said all the right things about it. Did have some success early in his career in Indianapolis. Is kind of the prototype with his shiftiness, kind of a quicker, smaller player to be inside against some of the quick twitch slot receivers that you'll see. Also a really good tackler, pound for pound. He's undersized, but he's a tough guy, and he'll be able to stick his nose inside. We'll see how Fuller's going to fare on the outside on the perimeter when he's in the game.
It is no longer the Lovie Smith, Rod Marinelli defense, and yet what Mel Tucker does, it still depends so much on that three technique inside, Kevin. And we know Lamar Houston is the most expensive of all the Bears free agents. We're told he's a right end. My suspicion he's going to spend more time inside at that three technique than he is outside.
Yeah, well, we'll learn that in Bourbonnais, Hub. We didn't see a ton of it early on, and that's going to be a big question for the whole defense. How much is Mel Tucker really going to show us in Bourbonnais in the preseason games? I imagine the Bears are going to want to keep a lot of things under wraps before the season gets started, but they also need to practice some things. Lamar Houston has experience there, but they're really excited about Jeremiah Ratliff. I think a lot of people forget about Stephen Paya, who's more of your nose there, and how he was off to a great start last season before his toe injury. Nate Collins also off to a great start last year before his ACL injury. And there's Will Sutton, the guy who was extremely productive in college as a junior and still somewhat productive as a senior. If he keeps his weight in check, he could be a pretty valuable three technique, and I think they got to be very excited about how deep they are at defensive tackle heading into Bourbonnais.
One more thing to keep an eye on this defense, folks. The heat of training camp, the dog days. How will this defense stand up? One thing we know for sure, if everybody stays healthy, they'll be the oldest defense in the NFL on opening day. 6 former Pro Bowlers will start. They will all be 30 plus, many of them in their mid-30s. Can they stand up to the training camp? Can they stand up over the course of the season? Maybe one of the biggest questions this Bears defense faces this year. Training camp's not what it used to be. If you want a great story on the history of Chicago Bears training camps, pick up Chicago Football Magazine, available at your newsstands right now. And for the best coverage of Bourbonnais, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, stay right where you are at chicagofootball.com.